Decision points. President Bush had to make plenty of tough calls during his days in the White House. How will history judge those tough calls? The president sat down with Matt Lauer to talk about his new book and his legacy. And breaking news, that's the title of Michael Jackson's new album. That's right, a new album. You know Michael, he won't stop till you get enough. And morning workout, as if the 405 wasn't bad enough, somebody left a Stairmaster in the middle of traffic. Moral of the story, you can run faster than traffic on the 405, even if you're running in place. All the stories people are talking about and everything you need to know right now on The Filter. Good Monday evening to you, and off the top, it's The Filter Forefront, our top four of the day, including, should people that report the news have the right to make political contributions? But we'll begin with this. You know, I mean this. You learn something new every day. Here's what I learned today. Gang members have rights too. Yep. They should be able to congregate wherever they want, except that's a problem in Orange County. See, in Orange County, there's a civil court order that prohibits gang members from engaging in specified activities while in public and within a defined geographic area known as a safety zone. There are 6 of those in Orange County. The ACLU is going to court to challenge the ruling. The case began today. Their position, gang members have rights. They should be able to congregate wherever they want. Our contributors tonight, actress and social activist Deborah Wilson, and Ron Kay from RonKLA.com. Our pictures are furnished by Skype. Here we go, Ron. Shouldn't cities have the right to protect themselves?
Well, cities do have the right. LA has gang injunctions all over the city specifying specific gang members and specific turf in their gang area that they can't operate in. I've always found it a little bit troubling because if a gang member gets a college degree, gets a job, goes straight, he has to go through hell to get his name off the injunction. But
he can, but let me just jump in. But he can apply to have his name removed, correct?
Indeed, and it's worked effectively to provide a chilling effect on them. As I read what went on in Orange County, they took it way beyond that and just sort of threw names in a hopper without really knowing who they had. They also blanketed an area, so the courthouse itself is off limits. Kids can't even walk home from school or are getting straight A's. I mean, they took it beyond the realm of specific violations and behavior, and I think that's where their fault is at, is it has to be very specific to not be a real violation of basic rights of anybody, even a gangster. If they've committed a crime, charge them, lock them up, and throw the key away. But that isn't the allegation. It's their mere right to assemble. This is still America sometimes.
All right, sometimes. 40 seconds, Deb. Do you agree or disagree with Ron?
I absolutely agree with Ron. It's one thing when you say violate a gang member's rights. Of course, you know what that's going to mean. We all know what the stimulation of that idea means. It means, why should we give them the rights? But now we're not talking about gang members. We're talking about them in civil situations. We're talking about people, young men in civil situations.
Yeah, but couldn't you make the argument?
And their rights be violated.
Deb, I understand.
And they're not acting according to a gang at that point.
I understand, but
in
Deb,
this case, in this particular case, rights are being violated.
Deb,
and it's a mishmash.
Yeah, but couldn't the argument be made that you don't know what they're going to do by virtue of the fact that they're in a gang?
No, and the reason I say that is until it actually happens, it hasn't happened.
Yeah, but if you wait till it happens, and sometimes it's too late.
That's always true, but that's why you lock them up then. Unfortunately, that's the way it works. That's a hard, cold fact. That's a hard, cold reality. But you don't try to prevent it by hurting someone else's civil liberties, really in a mishmash like this and in Orange County.
All right, well, talking about locking people up, how about this? If you commit the crime, obviously, you're going to do the time, right? There's something troubling here in the state of California. Are you aware of this? After someone does the time, there's a good possibility they're going to commit another crime. According to a new state report, in California, 2/3 of inmates released from prison return to crime within 3 years. According to the report, people with serious offenses are not as likely to commit another crime as often as those who are in jail for minor offenses. So in this case, if you've done something really bad, you're better than someone who wasn't as bad and will likely be bad again. Overall, things are so bad here in the state. California signed a $60 million deal with Michigan to ship 2,500 prisoners off. Since 2006, California has sent nearly 10,000 inmates to private prisons out of state. Is there anything that can be done about repeat offenders, Deborah?
Yeah, and here's what I think ought to be done. I think the law needs to be repealed. I think those who are repeat offenders, even in minor situations, in minor infractions, should actually be in jail longer. Let me tell you something. There are other countries that we look at and we think it's uncivilized to have corporal punishment. It's uncivilized to cane people. It's uncivilized to chop somebody's hands off. But you know what? Guess what? It works. I'm not saying you would do that in the United States, but I think that minor offenses, you should be in jail a lot longer and basically threaten you off, because that's exactly what we need. People know it's a revolving door system. People know it's a revolving door system, and they don't mind it. They're so used to it. They're used to being transferred from prison to prison and from basic facility to facility. They're used to it. They're getting 3 hots and a cot. They know exactly what to do. But bottom line is, if you want to threaten people, legally change the laws. Any minor law that has been broken needs to have major punishment. Stay in longer and put you with the same people who are murderers and rapists, and see what happens then. I'm mean. I'm a mean person.
We understand what you're saying, but here's the issue with that, Ron. Let's say you took Deborah's advice and that's how we handled things. There's not enough room for prisoners in this state now. How are you going to hold more, and how are you going to hold them longer?
Well, we have an outrageous number of prisoners in this state. We lock them up in jail on misdemeanors for 6 months, and they're out in 3 days. The fact is that a lot of people who go to prison as opposed to jail for minor offenses are, in fact, it's their first offense. They're plea bargained out. They really don't get the fact that there are terrible consequences till they've been in jail a long time. I think we really have to look at the causes of all the criminality in our city, in our state, of the failure of our education system, of the disparity in wealth and the lack of opportunity. I mean, we really sooner or later are going to have to come to terms with the causes of poverty and crime. The truth is that our parole system is certainly non-existent. And that's one of the problems with this thing is that guys are walking the streets who are menaces to society, and they aren't being tracked.
I think that's a fair point. Okay. Keith Olbermann is going to be back on the air for MSNBC tomorrow night. Now, he was indefinitely suspended, meaning for 2 days, for making contributions to political candidates' campaigns. That is against NBC News policy without approval. Olbermann donated $2,400 to 3 different campaigns. Once Phil Griffin, the president of MSNBC, found out, he immediately suspended him for violating policy. You could say, if you're reporting the news, you're supposed to remain objective. Keith Olbermann is anything but objective. Not only is he a reporter, but he is paid for his observations and perceptions. It's fair to say he goes beyond presenting the news. He also presents his own views. It's not against law to make a political contribution. Olbermann's crime here is that he didn't let the boss know he was doing it. So here's the question. Should anyone with a platform on TV that reports news and can influence people be allowed to make political donations, Ron?
Well, I think it's incredible. We've been talking about the rights of gang members, but when it comes to journalists, they have no right of the First Amendment when they're the ones who most visibly exercise the First Amendment right to speech. I mean, it's absolutely a crazy society. These rules weren't always there. It was a time when newspapers represented, a direct point of view. They were highly competitive. There were, I think, 8 or 9 papers in Los Angeles. What we've done is to use corporations, big giant corporations, have homogenized the news. They've gelded the journalists so that they pretend they don't have a point of view. You've seen the Rick Sanchez case. You've seen Olbermann's case. You've seen Juan Williams. I mean, these were utterly nothing. They were slips of speech or minor infractions. And I just think that we need to liberate the voices of journalists to speak the truth based on their knowledge, on their reporting, and their experience, and judge them accordingly, and stop pretending they're somehow have Olympian detachment and objectivity.
Do you think that's important, Deb, or do you agree with Ron?
I absolutely agree with Ron. Ron is a rock star. Along with Keith Olbermann and Rachel Maddow, Ron is a rock god. He needs to wear leather pants next time. The bottom line is
no, don't do that. Don't wear leather pants, Ron, please.
Show for a reason. Okay, it's called the Keith Olbermann Show. He should have a point of view. He absolutely does have a point of view. And anyone who watches in MSNBC knows that people like Rachel Maddow and people like Keith Olbermann have opinions. They've always had opinions, and I'm grateful for those opinions. Here's the thing. It does not get in the way of their reporting. Regardless of whether it's a slant, the information, whether slanted or not, is actual factual information. So it's not as if he's doctored the information. He's provided the information in his point of view, but he's made sure that he's done his homework, as he always does. He's a fantastic wordsmith, and he does enough research to let you know that whether he has a point of view or not, the facts are the facts. Good for you. Yay, Keith.
All right, but I would just add, the facts are the facts, presented in the way he wants you to hear the facts. That's fair.
He should. He absolutely should. If you don't like MSNBC, don't watch.
There's
fair. Always Fox.
That's fair. Okay. It's book tour time for George Bush. His memoirs will be released tomorrow. How will history remember George Bush? Coming up at 8 o'clock on Channel 4. Matt Lauer will talk with him for an hour. Among the things they talked about, something the president called his worst moment in the White House. And Kanye West made a racial comment about him in the midst of Hurricane Katrina.
You remember what he said?
Yes, I do. He called me a racist.
Well, what he said was George Bush doesn't care about black people.
That says he's a racist. And I didn't appreciate it then, and I don't appreciate it now. It's one thing to say, I don't appreciate the way he's handled his business. It's another thing to say this man's a racist. I resent it. It's not true. And it was one of the most disgusting moments of my presidency.
This is from the book. I faced
he remembers that as a rough moment. How will history remember George Bush? What are you laughing about, Deb? Was he a good president?
He says one of the most worst moments in his presidency. He actually said that.
What?
He should screw the book, start a stand-up tour.
Well, all right, well, what's so funny?
Let's see.
What is it?
George Bush. Let's see. He lied during office. He started war in the wrong country, and then allegedly it was for profit and definitely for oil. And then on top of speaking of profit, he had a vice president who actually has a security company there. He waterboarded illegally, and not to mention Donald Rumsfeld and Karl Rove. Ooh, and I thought Halloween was over. It's like Freddie and Jason. No, he wasn't a great president who left us with a crappy legacy when it came to the finances of our country and the deficit. But you know what? Good luck with the book tour, George.
Well, Ron, do you think George Bush did anything right? If you listen to Deborah, it was a complete disaster.
Well, it was a disaster, and it's continuing, I'm afraid. The problem with George is his citing of Kanye West being the worst moment in his presidency is silly. And from everything I've read about this, I haven't seen the Matt Lauer interview. He has trouble really finding his narrative. I think he had trouble finding his narrative during his presidency as it wore on. Things went really sour. There's no question we made a lot of mistakes that we're living with. And he's come out with a book awfully quickly for a guy, and it suggests he hasn't really reflected or gotten his own sense of history to be able to emphasize the things that work, what his real goals were, and how some things were achieved. You can't blame him for all the things that have gone wrong in our society. He gets his share of blame, I think, historically.
But Ron,
really, this is a...
I know we're running out of time. Let me just ask you to put it in perspective. To be very fair, his approval rating after the way he handled 9/11 was through the roof. He did a good job there, didn't he?
He jumped all over it and held the country together, and he stood tall. Whether he made the right decisions following that, they certainly don't look good now. But he's somewhat getting a bum rap because things are sour. And that's the price of time. That's why we have history books that take a longer perspective. And we'll see where he ranks. This has been a time of transition and great difficulty, and it isn't over for a long time now.
All right, Ron, Deborah, great job tonight. Thanks so much. I'll talk to you guys soon.